This is the vaping portion of our presentation. So we're constantly updating the section because the trends are always changing. So to give you some context, this most recent recording is being done in November of 2019. When we talk about vaping today, we're going to be referring to any electronic vaporizers such as e-cigarettes, vapes, vape pens, vaporizers, and e-hookahs. It's important to note that there has been a 78% rise in vaping in 1 year, which is really concerning. However, students do need to know that there's not as many students vaping as they believe are actually vaping. Not everyone is doing this. However, it's important to understand the risks so that we can provide this education to our students. You're here today to learn about e-cigarettes and vape pens, but it's also important to understand the history of the tobacco industry, since a lot of the strategies that are being used by e-cigarette and vape pen manufacturers were those that were used and are still being used by cigarette companies. So the new focus on increasing nicotine use with new and popular nicotine delivery devices includes e-cigarettes and vape pens. Unfortunately, tobacco smoking causes around 480,000 deaths every year, but people are still deciding to smoke. This is in part because the tobacco industry has become really good at hiding the risks of cigarette smoking. So let's take a look at the historical context and some of the tobacco industry's tactics that they've been using. So what do you notice about these ads? They're using doctors to make strong claims about the lack of risk associated with cigarettes. Many tobacco companies in the past tried to convince their customers that cigarettes were not only harmless, but actually good for your health. So just like the doctors in these ads, the information about the cigarettes could be misleading or even completely made up. Most of our early research on tobacco wasn't done by universities, hospitals, or the government. It was actually done by the Tobacco Institute, which was funded by the tobacco industry. Early on in the history of cigarettes, it was actually considered unladylike to smoke in public until tobacco companies realized that marketing to women would get them new customers. So women eventually became the focus of new ad campaigns. So these campaigns often relied on sexist messages to convince women to smoke to be modern, fashionable, thin, and smart. Here's some other examples of the fact that we know cigarette ads are not only intended for adults. The cigarette industry has really tried to make their ads appealing to kids and teens because they want to try and hook customers at a young age. So they're trying to have young people connect to their brands early in life. This is an actual quote from a tobacco industry. Today's teenager is tomorrow's potential regular customer, and the overwhelming majority of smokers first begin to smoke while still in their teens. Another quote, straight from the tobacco industry, the base of our business is the high school student. We know that 88% of smokers are exposed to nicotine by the time they're 18 years old. Past that window, they're a lot less likely to start smoking. Tobacco companies know this, and they're using their ads to find new customers. So early tobacco advertising was really effective, and smoking became more and more common. Smoking rates were climbing until about 1964, and that's the year that the Surgeon General published a report that explained a lot of the harmful effects of smoking. Up until that point, the public suspected that smoking may have been bad for your health, but then this groundbreaking report actually confirmed it. So after the release of the report, trends in smoking began to decrease. This report was impactful because the tobacco industry's manipulation was exposed and accurate information from a trusted source was finally available to the public. As a result, the U.S. Department of Justice filed suit against the cigarette companies for violating civil provisions of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act and other laws. This is the same law that was actually used in the 70s to prosecute the mafia and others who were engaging in organized crime. The court ordered the cigarette companies to actually publish corrective statements telling the public that they had lied about the dangers of smoking, secondhand smoke, and nicotine addiction. The court also prohibited them from challenging the evidence that these statements are true, which is why the companies no longer do so. Although all of this might seem like ancient history, you may have noticed tobacco companies aren't the type that give up easily. So the tobacco industry has created new marketing techniques to bring in new cigarette smoking customers. And the industry has developed new products and advertised them using their old techniques. In this presentation, we're going to explore some of these new and recycled strategies that are used by the tobacco industry today. Next, we want to talk about what are vape pens? Like, what do we need to know about the components? So this is a picture that shows the different parts of a vape pen. So the battery is the energy source of the device, and that's what powers the atomizers. The atomizer is actually the heating element that heats the liquid and is often coil-shaped. E-liquid, sometimes called e-juice, is put into the device and often contains flavors and nicotine. We'll talk more about what some of those flavors are and the risks associated. The cartridge tank holds the e-liquid and may also hold the atomizer. And then the aerosol is the heating e-liquid that then the device creates into an aerosol that's inhaled into the body and out into the air. One of the major appeals of e-cigarettes and vape pens is that there's over 15,000 flavors of e-liquid available. So these are just some of the flavors that you can find. The various trendy flavors have been really successful marketing strategy that allows the e-cigarette and vape users to consume nicotine without the harsh taste of cigarettes. It might come as a surprise to many, but the flavors themselves pose a risk to the e-cigarette and vape user because some flavors have been shown to be toxic due to the chemicals that they contain. So for example, various cinnamon flavors contain certain toxic compounds, and the cherry flavor is another example of a flavor that has some toxic compounds. Cinnamon, vanilla, and butter flavoring chemicals were the most toxic when research was done, but our research showed that mixing flavors of e-liquids caused by far the most toxicity to white blood cells. Now I want to spend some time going over what are some of the devices and what do they look like so that you as parents and caregivers can recognize these. So Juul pods are probably the most popular these days, so popular that it's actually become a verb. Students will refer to this as juuling rather than vaping. So all Juul pods are going to contain nicotine and are equivalent to 1 pack of cigarettes. The power source can be recharged through a USB, and they're refillable pods. So a 4-pack of refillable pods is actually equal to the cost of 1 pack of cigarettes. So a lot of times students are keeping these Juul pods in their backpacks, and when parents or teachers find them, they're claiming that it's just a USB charger because they look so similar. The Soren is another popular device on the market. It has a really sleek design, as you can see. There's this teardrop shape called the Soren Drop, and then the regular Soren, which is about the same size as a credit card, as you can see from this visual, a little bit smaller. And the benefit of a Soren is that it holds longer charges. The Fix is another popular thing on the market right now. So you inhale to activate it, and you get 220 puffs for 1 full charge. So that's the equivalent of 3 Juul pods. So you're getting a lot more bang for your buck with this device. Dab pens are used almost exclusively for smoking concentrated THC. So this is typically referred to as dabbing. And there's a number of things that can be put into the dab pens besides just marijuana. So that's something that parents need to keep an eye out for. It's not just going to be e-juice or marijuana that's in dab pens. There can be other things as well. This is a new product on the market called Snus. This is a smokeless moist powder tobacco pouch from Sweden that you place under your top lip. And it comes in flavors like mint and wintergreen. You don't burn it and you don't have to spit when you use it. So snus does contain nicotine, which makes it addictive, and you can get hooked on it. Quitting this habit has the same unpleasant side effects as when you stop smoking, like headaches and nausea. So each snus packet has about 1 to 4 cigarettes worth of nicotine in it. They are addictive and they affect the cardiovascular system and increase the risk of cancer. They are still tobacco products, even though people have tried to argue that they're not. Smokeless tobacco products also deliver more nicotine and nitrosamines than cigarettes, although snus generally has lower levels of that than other smokeless products. This is a visual that just compares nicotine content for different vaping devices that I just talked about. So Juul pods are the equivalent of 1 pack of cigarettes, a Fix has the equivalent of 2 packs, and a Soren Drop is going to have the equivalent of 3 packs of cigarettes and the content of nicotine. Some other things that are helpful for parents to be aware of are dripping and cloud chasing. So dripping is a form of vaping, but instead of filling up a vape tank as you normally would, you're going to drip a small amount of e-juice directly onto the coil or the bridge of the vape pen. So vaping aficionados tend to practice dripping because it allows them to alternate flavors without having to switch flavor tanks. And by dripping e-juice onto your atomizer, you can enjoy several flavors in one sitting in just one vape session. It's also an easy and relatively cost-effective way to produce denser vape clouds, which some vapors prefer. The issue is that dripping generates higher heating coil temperatures than conventional use of e-cigarettes, and this is a safety concern because the higher temperatures lead to greater emissions of a class of harmful chemicals. Cloud chasing is the activity of blowing large clouds of vapor using an electronic cigarette. So some cloud chasers can be known as professional vapors, and they can take part in cloud blowing contests, which is called a cloud competition. You can look up cloud competitions on YouTube and just see examples of what our students are engaging in. Many vape companies are actually hosting these competitions because it increases the use of their product and they get some free advertising out of it. A lot of adults are wondering, how is this happening? Like, how are students getting all of this access? Well, it's getting easier and easier for students to obtain. At this point, they can go to the store, use cash to buy an Amazon gift card, create an Amazon account, and then have a product sent to an Amazon locker so that it can't be tracked. Luckily, Governor Newsom just passed Senate Bill 39 in September of 2019, and this requires a 21 or up ID to purchase any tobacco products online. So hopefully this avenue is going to be cut off, but it is something to be aware of. Students also will order things and have it delivered to houses nearby that they know people are at work and not home, and they'll be able to go collect the package before the homeowner gets back. Students can also buy directly from a lot of stores that sell their product online through websites or social media. And so credit card charges may have a name on the purchase that won't necessarily appear to relate to vaping, so it can be easily overlooked by parents that are tracking the accounts. Vaporware is also a new trend that we encourage you to look up online. It's spelled Vaprwear, vaporware. This is a clothing line that specializes in making discreet vapewear. So if you're looking at a traditional hoodie sweatshirt that has the two strings that hang down, they're actually equipped to be able to vape through those strings so they can vape anywhere discreetly, such as class or at the dinner table. There's also these new vape pens that are in the shape of a Sharpie or even vape watches that you can research. And this is making it, as we said before, easier and easier for students to have access. In our next segment, we're going to talk about some of the harms associated with vaping that you can share with your students.